والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه أما بعد. Oh man, I realized I left my prayer rug in the car. Is that okay? I left my prayer rug in the car? Okay, cool. So, Anna, sit over there. You have so much room there. You can drive your trucks there. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to apologize. I'm going to be slurring my speech quite a bit. I had an allergic reaction yesterday, and my whole lower part of my jaw and everything was swollen up. So it's mostly gone away, but still hasn't completely. So you can sort of tell I'm not speaking properly. So if you don't understand something, let me know. That's the first thing. Second thing, was it that bad last week that we dropped from 15 guys to 6 guys? That's it? The next week's gonna go down to 2, then down to 0. No, I'm just joking. I'm totally just joking. Okay, bismillah. How are y'all doing? Man, you look tired, both of you. Or you just don't want to be here. Or a combination of them. How are y'all doing? Urslan, yes. Urslan? No, man. Hold on. Let's just tell me. Is this Sufyan? Is that Hudayfa? That's what it is. Let's go to the names again. Hudayfa? Uzair. Okay, you were sitting here last time. Go ahead. Hamza. And you sort of switched. You were sitting over there. Okay, and then you are Hudayfa. Uzair, Hamza, Hudayfa. Hisham. Nice. What's your name? Yusuf. Okay. Good. Hudayfa, part 2. Jawad, okay, cool. Okay, nice. Okay, then take a little time, guys. But if you see me in the masjid and if you say salam to me, just tell me your name. That way I get it down. And don't feel like I'm a teacher by profession. I teach high school. And I have one junior high class, mostly high school. And one of the things I know is that I tell my students that, look, it's going to take me a good quarter to get to know your name. So that means I'm seeing them every day, 5 days a week. And it takes me about, what's a quarter? It's 2 months to get the names down. Isn't that right, Johnson? I'm just joking. Mir was one of my students from before. So I couldn't forget Mir's name. It's too special. What's up, Hamna? No, go. Hugs later. Thank you. All right. No nakhra over here. Okay, so now we begin the life of Malcolm X. Malcolm X, rahmatullahi alayhi. SubhanAllah, when you look at how his life begins, it's almost like, dude, this person's life is set up for failure. What? Yeah, go play truck stack, go. And it's almost like his life is set up for failure. And this is the first lesson I want us to understand. We don't have it that bad. As bad as you think you have it, and as bad as I might think I have it, we don't have it that bad. When we look at the factors that play into his life, he is going to be a statistic. What's a statistic, right? Like those students those children that they basically say, according to the statistics, this individual has X amount of chance to graduate high school or graduate middle school. He's going to be a statistic. He's going to be one of those kids who's not going to graduate anywhere, not amount to anything, and just be an absolute failure. Of course, I'm not speaking that as my opinion, but from sociological studies, they show what's the projection of certain people. And why are we looking at it this way? Because he's growing up. He's born in the early 1900s, and he's born in a time. And we're going to talk about his pre-birth life first, where slavery has just come to an end, and bigotry and racism is rampant. None of us here that I see over here live in a situation where we are discriminated against in such a way that our mere existence is going to be separated from the rest of our community. None of you drink from different colored water fountains. None of you have to pray in a certain row in the masjid. None of you have to go to a certain masjid to pray. None of you have to go to a certain school to attend, etc. That doesn't happen. His context, his circumstance is that of almost he's going to fail. And I want all of us to consider this. As bad as you have it, think of all the bright sides that are there. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam has told us a very interesting statement. He said, "Ajaban li amrin mu'min." How strange. And ajab also means to be attractive. So Hisham, if I knew you were coming, I would have had Uthman come. Man, because he was coming, then he's like, I'll stay back and do Quran because he has to study for class. But if he knew you were coming, he would just jump in. So I'm going to tell him for next week to jump in, inshallah. So how strange, but at the same time attractive. Because ajab means to be strange, but also means attractive, is the affair of the believer. Because verily, the affair of the believer, all of it is good. If I were to tell you there's a boy in our community, forget our community, there's a boy in a community who, he's an orphan, parents have passed away, and is in poverty, and unfortunately didn't get the opportunity to go to school, so is not well read, and on top of that, just the community, they feel bad for him, but they sort of at the same time, as he got older, they don't have pity on him anymore. So he already didn't really grow up in a strong home, didn't get to see his siblings because of various reasons. His community sort of turns away from him because of some things that happened in his life, and he lived in poverty. Would you say success or fail? What do you think is going to happen? Will he succeed or will he fail? And explain your answer with the factors that I just mentioned to you. Come on, guys. Should I start calling on you randomly? Probably fail. Why?
Because he doesn't have the necessary things in his life to keep him straight.
Jawad, right? Yeah, he doesn't have the necessary elements or components in his life to help him succeed. I just described the Prophet ﷺ to you. Orphan, poverty, community turns against him, was never educated formally. Was he a failure? Not even close. But the circumstance, Jawad, that his life was set up in is one that we would say would lend to failure. I agree with you 100%. And so I just want to, anyone here an orphan? No? Okay, alhamdulillah. Anyone here live in a situation where you are not educated? You're not given education? Alhamdulillah. Anyone living, you don't have to answer this question, but below poverty level, I don't think anyone here is below poverty level. So all of us already are a step ahead socially from what the Prophet ﷺ was given. So the resources a person gets, those resources are not going to determine their success. There are tangible and intangible elements that will help that person become successful. Malcolm X is the same way. His background already is going to go against him. I'll give you an example. Malcolm X, before he was born, what do we know about him? So his life already is thrown off before he was born. His mother is the daughter of a black woman and a black slave woman, and her mother's a black slave woman, and her father is whom? He has an Irish background. Mixed marriage? No. It was the master raping the servant. That's what it was. So his mother is, I told you guys last week, we're going to have adult concepts here. I sort of have to. That's how we get the life of Malcolm X. Anas, guys, don't throw stuff, please. Thank you. You can drive your trucks, don't throw your trucks. You're making me look bad over here. Okay. His mother's the daughter of a rape. A white man taking advantage of a black woman. Now think what that does to the psychology of that young woman, the daughter. She grew up despising whiteness. She grew up hating whiteness. She herself was extremely light-skinned. And Malcolm, if you look at all the siblings in him, he's very light-skinned as well. And he writes that when he was younger, his mom, when she would get upset with the children, and when people were younger, you would get hit when you're younger. You guys don't really understand that as much. You might a little, but it wasn't illegal in any way, shape, or form to get hit by a parent back then. He would say that when he was younger, his mom, if any of the siblings did anything wrong, they would get beat. But if he did something wrong, she would beat him excessively. And he said he always felt it was because he had this reddish hair. And remember, his grandfather from his mom's side is what? An Irishman. So he had red hair. And he had light skin tone. And already, so his mom, when she looks at him, he feels that she has some, not hatred for him, but the circumstance from which he was born. Louis. The father of Malcolm, his name is Earl Little. Earl is a follower of Marcus Garvey. Who's Marcus Garvey? Marcus Garvey is a leader of the Pan-African nationalist movement. Basically, what did they say? They said that we were stolen from Africa, we were brought to America, we need to make our way back to Africa, and we need to help build Africa back into its glory days. Because Africa in its history was a civilization of greatness. If you look at all the different African kingdoms before they were ransacked, were kingdoms of greatness. Now people might say, well, they deserve to go down because if you're a kingdom that can't defend itself, then you deserve to go down. No, their fault and flaw was the same quote-unquote fault and flaw of the Native Americans. They wanted to help people, and they were trusting. Because in those communities, they didn't, even though there was crime, etc., they didn't deceive one another to this level. And so he was a follower of Marcus Garvey. And so he was a very big, he was like 6'4". And he's an extremely black man, extremely dark. That's what Malcolm writes about him. And Malcolm said part of the reason he feels his mom married his dad is because how dark he was. She was hoping that the children would not have whiteness within them. But I mean, they both worked for under Marcus Garvey volunteering, and then they sort of met, and that's how they got married. Malcolm was born in 1925, and he's born in Nebraska. But not too long after they're born, they moved to Michigan. And this is the first real test that he faces. Why did they move to Michigan? Because the opportunities for an African American, a black man and a black woman, a black family in the South are very restricted. So they move up north pretty much right away. So he doesn't have much experience over there. Now I want you guys to think about this for a moment. In the life of the Prophet ﷺ, we have situations of hijrah. What's hijrah? Anas, Anas, Anas. No yelling, okay? Khadija, if you're bothering him, I can't bring you back next week, right? Thank you. Okay. They are made to move, and they actually move multiple times. And this part I'm skipping consciously. I'm going to some of the more important moments shortly. But they're made to move. And if you look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, he is made to move. The main move that he has occurred in his life is the hijrah. But you see that a lot of leaders in our past are people who are forced into discomfort. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that, I want you guys to think. Who's ever moved before? I just moved into this community. Where'd you move from where to where? Okay, so that's not a long move, right? That's only like a 15-minute drive, 10-minute drive. Was it easy to move?
No. It wasn't hard. It wasn't like easy.
It wasn't easy, right? It wasn't hard, but it wasn't easy. It's just pack your bags, you find all this random stuff, you throw it away, do you sell it, etc. All these things happen. Was it easy to fit into a new community, a new school? You haven't gone back to school in person yet, right? Yeah, so you're sort of a little different for you. But it's not easy. And then you have all this, you have to meet neighbors, to meet friends, etc. All those things are different obstacles. It's not easy to move. Now imagine having to move because you know where you live, they want to kill you. And you go to a new place only to find, and I'm going to get to one of the first things that happen, that you move to an area around East Lansing, Michigan, and what do you find? That everyone there is also unhappy with you. The North, as you thought it was, is not going to be this great place. They're also unhappy with you. Malcolm's father's home was burnt down, and he had to witness that. He had to witness that the home is set on fire and is burnt down. What does it do to a child? On top of that, he has to witness that people come, the Michigan militia, the sort of the KKK of that region, they come brandishing their weapons at night, and they go to the house, they knock on the doors, and then his mom has to step out and say, well, he's not home, he's not home. And they want to see the father. What does it do? You're constantly growing up thinking that you are not worth it. You're not worth anything, that you are a plague, a scourge within society. And unfortunately, some of us feel that way as well. How many of you ever felt weird for being, not in a bad way, but just felt out of place because you're Muslim in the West? Anyone ever have that feeling? It's a little hard in Glendale Heights. I think Glendale Heights, I think non-Muslims feel weird over here because it's just like so many days around here. But I was in Milwaukee for a period of time. And sometimes it's weird because, you're walking, I walk around like this, and they'll sort of look at you, and there's a hesitation. There can be a multitude of responses and reactions, which we're going to get into in about 2 or 3 weeks when Malcolm moves to Boston. That's up to you how you respond. Malcolm responded in a way that he wasn't proud of, and later he changed that response. Okay, now let's go to the first major incident. We have this fire in the home of Malcolm. They get a new property. They have land. Dad is a large man. He loves to work with his hands. Mother is taking care of her children through this marriage, and then her husband's children from a previous marriage. Malcolm is the youngest of 6. And they are working here now. They're working. and his father begins to receive very credible death threats. It's crazy death threats that he's receiving. So now he's getting these death threats. And who remembers the title of the first chapter? It's called what? Nightmare. Very good. Why is it called Nightmare? The reason it's called Nightmare is because his mother, Louise, she used to see visions. And Malcom says he gained her intuition. And firasa, like having this intuition, is something that the believers, Rasulullah told us, ittaqu firasa al-mu'min فَإِنَّهُ يَنْظُرُ بِنُورِ اللَّهِ. Fear the inside of a believer, for very he looks with the light of Allah. He sees through Allah's guidance. But even non-Muslims can get a type of opening like this. It depends upon a person's purity, disconnection from dunya, etc. He said his mom would often have these intuitions that were true. So one day, Earl comes into the house. And Malcom said his mom and dad would argue a lot. And he comes and he brings a rabbit. It's a funny situation. He's like, cook this rabbit. She's like, I'm not cooking no rabbit. He's like, cook this rabbit. And it wasn't even dead. He's like, cook this rabbit. She said, I'm not cooking a rabbit. So he takes the rabbit. He's a strong man. He grabs his head, twists his head, pops it off, and throws it at her feet. It's a traumatic situation. And she just breaks down crying. At the table, she's just sitting and crying, and he walks off. Now, as she's sitting crying like this, she sees a vision, and she gets up. She runs to the door. She's like, Earl, come back, Earl, come back, Earl, come back. And he's just walking, he smiles, he turns around, he waves, and he keeps going. This is the first major incident that Malcom talks about. Even the fire, he doesn't really remember it that much, but this situation is very well ingrained in his mind. That day, he said his mom was not the same. She was really nervous. And this is pre-cell phone days. You can't just call, how are you doing, where are you at, etc. You know, if you have an iPhone, I think you could track one another where you're going. That's pre all this time. So Malcom is seeing his mother, and she's fretting. She's really having a hard time with this. By the time the evening comes in, Earl has not come back home. Now she's crying, she can't sleep. Late at night, the police come to the door. They want to see Malcom's mother. She's coming, she's in her robe, she's crying, she's a mess. And they say that, we found your husband's body. Now look what happens. They said that we found his body. His skull was crushed in. His head was crushed in. And his body was pretty much torn into two on a rail. Like, you know, streetcars, like rail cars, they go on these rails. And it was torn into two. And Malcom said, my dad was such a strong man, that despite those injuries, he didn't die right away. He was alive for a few hours, and finally he succumbed to his injuries and he died. Now, to know your father died is difficult. I have many friends who have a parent or both parents who have passed away. To know that a parent has passed away is very difficult. To know all those threats were constantly being hurled finally came to fruition is a whole different reality. Because now what it does for the child, the psyche of a child, it makes them think that they took my dad out. Is my mom next? Am I next? They already burnt my house down before. They forced us to leave from a different area. They've done all this. All their threats, they're coming to fruition. And so now what do we do as practical takeaways? Because we don't learn about their lives, just learn about history. If that's the case, just read the book at home. We come together and we learn so we can take the lessons. The first thing we do is, if you have both parents, if they're both alive, whether you live with them, you don't live with them, whether you love them or you have something in your heart against them. And I'm not saying who's what. I don't know what your relationship with your parents are. Hey guys, we're not fighting that Khadija, you're not hitting him, right? With the doll, you're not hitting him with that, right? Okay. Just want to make sure they're not fighting. Anyway, coming back. So the first thing is you have to make dua for your parents. Look, you might not have a living parent. Or if you do, you might not have a parent that you live with. And if you do, you might not have a parent that you like. And look, I have parents. Alhamdulillah, my parents are still alive. My dad and mom are older. They don't live too far from here. They're closer to Dar es Salaam. And I will tell you very openly that sometimes your relationship can be rough. Forget about there were times. There are times today as a 40-year-old man that I upset my parents. There are times when my parents still treat me like a kid. I'm serious. Why did I have this allergic reaction? Because my parents gave me food to eat yesterday that I shouldn't have eaten, but I felt bad saying no to mom and dad, so I ate it. And I didn't tell them. I hope they're not listening or something, but they don't know. The whole allergic reaction, and I had to take Benadryl during Tarawih, and I almost fell asleep, and that was it. The whole day was ruined. But you're a kid. In fact, my wife, when she goes to Texas to visit her parents, or her dad, her mom, her dad has passed away now. My dad would call me. He said, "Kahan par hai?" I'm like, "Masjid." He's like, "Ab ghar kab aa rahe hain?" When are you coming home? I'm like, when am I coming home? I'm in my 30s with kids in my own different home. He's like, "Hurry up." I'm like, "Okay, I'm coming home." My dad, if he says, I wet my pants completely. We're always the children of our parents. The first lesson is for your parents, especially if they're alive today, you have to make dua for them. How many of us can honestly say we spend 10 minutes in dua for our parents alone daily? 10 minutes. 10 minutes is 1/6 of an hour, and an hour is 1/24 of a day. So 1/6 times 1/24 is what? 1/300? 1/276 of a day for our parents in dua. That's so little. We're not doing that. Rasulullah has, Allah Ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. Yes? Okay, just be nice, okay? That verily, if you are grateful, we will increase you. لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ. If you are grateful, لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. I will increase you. The increase means to give you more in amount or give you more quality. If things are going wrong with your parents at home and you don't like them, make dua for them. لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. He'll increase the quality of your relationship. If things are going wrong at home because you don't have enough time with your parents, maybe they're working too much, make dua for them and be grateful for them. That's what لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ means. Then Allah will increase inshallah, the quantity of your time, at the very least the quality of your time, that these few hours seem like a day. Yeah, go. And if things are in such a situation where there's something else that's going wrong with parents, make dua for them and show gratitude for them. And I want all of us to put into our minds, when can I make dua? Don't just say, yeah, I'll do it. Literally sit down and say, after every prayer, I'm going to make 1 minute of dua for my parents. Oh Allah, forgive their sins. Oh Allah, thank you for them. Include the gratitude. Oh Allah, increase them that which is good. Save them from that which is harmful. If you do that for every prayer, that's 5 minutes right there, that you made dua for your parents. 1 minute after each prayer. Okay, go. And then the second thing, what we learned from Malcom, is recognize that their time on this earth is short. One of my friends, Maulana Yusuf, who's a teacher here at Darus Salam, his father just passed away about a month ago. And he wrote this whole like a reflection about his dad. He has a Maulana Asfar Uddin, who used to be in this community. He's the Imam at MSI. He used to be in this community. His father, who's a staple, he'd always be here praying because they live very close. He just, a Zia uncle, he just passed away this past year. Maulana Asfar wrote this 20-something page reflection about his father. You can write reflections, and I'm glad they do, about their parents. Yes. Okay, go back there and play, okay? And that's what we should do. But we should also take advantage of our time when they are here with us. If we always focus on the bad, time will fly by, and then when they eventually leave this world, we'll have a lot of regrets. Malcolm's father left him early on. Yes.
Baba?
Yeah. Okay, I want you three to come over here.
I love you.
I love you too. Listen.
Baba?
Listen. I can't bring you back if you behave this way. You have to go back and play, okay? I want you to go,
Yes.
go play with your trucks, okay? Okay. So this is a very important idea. Malcolm saw his father die. Well, not literally die, but he was there when his father died. And he could never get his father back. And if you look at what happens all the way till he reaches 20 years of age, a lot of that is attributed to the lack of a father figure early in life. He didn't have one. So no matter what your relationships with your parents, it's not always going to be good. But there was a period of time where my dad would come home from the work, I would go straight to my room. And I would come down when he went to sleep. There was a rough patch in our life. I wasn't a good kid. He was a good father. I just wasn't a good kid. But alhamdulillah, Allah gave us life such that we were able to get past that. You don't know if that... I'm going to have to call Mama now.
No.
Okay, please stay over there, okay?
No.
We don't know if that time is going to happen for any of us. We have to love our parents despite their difficulties and despite their shortcomings. Look, they're human. I'm a parent. I got 5 kids. Alhamdulillah. It's not easy. It's not easy. Look, you think right now I'm just like, oh, just go back and play. If at home, be like, like, what are you doing? You know, I have to look good in front of you guys, right? But the idea is that it's not always easy. Now Malcolm, now his mom becomes a single mother. His father, before he passed away, he took out 2 life insurance policies. It's not an Islamic thing to do, but they weren't Muslim. So that in case he's killed or dies, they can get all this money. From the 2 life insurance policies, you know how many honor their life? So he pays every month. You know how many gave them the money that they were supposed to get? Who can guess? Hamza, how many did they get? You're close. Want to try again? Uzair, help him out. Help out your brother. From the 2 life insurance, how many does he get? So the answer could either be 2 or 0 now, because your brother took 1. 0. What do they say? They say, oh, your husband, he killed himself. Do you see what's happening over here? Malcolm is living in a time of such racism that his dad every month would pay for life insurance. Again, I'm not saying it's Islamic. And then when he dies, he's killed. They said, no, he committed suicide. He must have taken his head and bashed it into a stone and crushed it completely. And then in that state of a crushed skull and brain damage, walked over to a distant railway, put his body under a train so it could run him over. This is what their claim was. So what Malcolm is now, he has the shock of having to move, having to see his house burned down, having to see people threaten his father's life, and then see his father be brutally killed, and then see his mother now have to try to raise them on her own, and she works at different locations as like a housemaid, but because she looks white, even though she's partially black. And every time the kids show up just to ask her for something, they realize, oh, she's a black woman, they fire her. Then he has to live with seeing that every time his blackness is known, something goes bad. Then they could finally cash in the life insurance policy, and then the white people, I'm not going against white people, I'm just talking about what happens in the 1920s, 1930s in America right now. They say, we're not going to honor it because your husband committed suicide, which is a ridiculous claim. And this got so difficult on his mother that she snaps. And now she actually goes crazy, and she's institutionalized. So his early first 10 years of his life, what happens? Because of the fact that he's black, all of these things begin to happen to him. Forced to move, house burned down, threats to parents, father brutally murdered, insurance policy is not going to honor what they say. Mother is constantly fired when they find out she's black, and now she loses her sanity and she goes insane and she's institutionalized, and now they're sent into foster care. Does anyone here ever feel like, man, my life is rough? At least sometimes. I mean, I do sometimes, like, oh man, my life's a little rough. Anyone ever feel that before? No? Ever? No one? Okay, 1. No one else yet? Anyone ever have that happen to them, what I just listed over here? This is what we're talking about. This is why we study the lives of people. Some of the greatest people had some of the most difficult lives. And sometimes when we only live in our bubble and we see, oh, my life is horrible, we don't see, man, I actually have it good. My parents and I might not get along, for example, but at least they're still there. Man, I have it good. I might not live in a mansion, but at least I live in a decent apartment or home where I'm not constantly threatened. Man, I have it good. I live in a city where I can walk outside and I see other Muslims around me. No one's threatening to kill me. This is what Malcolm went, and this is all in the first less than 10 years of his life. Now, Malcolm and his siblings are all split up. We have 3 minutes. I want to get through one more story before it's 3 minutes on. I don't know if I'll be able to. They're all split up. Malcolm goes to a home in which he has a white family adopted as a foster home, and they actually treat him very well. When they treat him well, he goes to a junior high school that's predominantly white. He's the only black kid in the junior high school. And he's voted class president. So things are looking different all of a sudden. He speaks well. He's a nice kid. People like him. He's pretty handsome. Yes. Okay, look, now I need you guys to just play there quietly because I look at you. People are praying, so now I need you to pray there quietly, okay? Things are turning up, so now he's thinking, okay, maybe it's going to go okay. Then the incident in 7th grade occurs. He has a 7th grade English teacher, Mr. Ostrowski. And Mr. Ostrowski liked Malcolm quite a bit. So one day he goes to Malcolm, he goes to the whole class and says, what do you guys want to be when you grow up? By the way, what do you want to be when you grow up? Yusuf, right? What do you want to be when you get older? You're not sure? What about you, Amir? What do you want to be when you grow up? I'm joking. So Mr. Ostrowski's asking this question. Malcolm, he says, I never really thought, I never thought about it. And he's like, I don't know what made me answer this way. But he says, I raised my hand and said, oh, I want to be a lawyer. So Mr. Ostrowski leans back. He's like, Malcolm, you're good, and he uses the N-word. I'm not going to use the N-word here. It's a derogatory term towards black African Americans. You're a good N. We like you here. Class president, you're a good guy. You're good with your hands. You should become a carpenter. Because people like you, they don't become lawyers. Malcolm, that breaks him. That's the straw that broke his back. He used to look up to his English teacher. He used to feel, this guy understands me, and he's a good guy. And this person turns to him and says, what? You're an N, uses the N-word. You can't be a lawyer. You can only be a carpenter. And at that point, Malcolm's hope in humanity crashes. And that's where he begins to turn. And so we're going to stop over here. I want to share that incident. We're going to go into that incident more next week. So what are the lessons from this week? Lesson number 1, recognize that no matter how bad we have it, others have it worse. And that's why we study the lives of others so we can see what they have and we can show gratitude for what we have. Lesson 2, be grateful for everything, good and bad, because even in the bad, there's good. The ulama say even in the loss, the Prophet ﷺ passing away, there's goodness, because no further Sharia was revealed, because it could have become constricting upon us. The third thing, make a lot of dua, especially for parents, because in their absence is only when we realize that we've lost something. And last but not least, recognize that in your life there's going to be obstacles. And we're going to get into next week. Those obstacles, depending on how you respond, will build our character and build our strength or ruin it. So we stop over here because at 1:15 is supposed to be prayer time. It's 1:15 right now. Wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. So it's going to be azan time. So same thing as last week. I'm stepping away just to take my kids home during prayer because I don't want them to disturb people during prayer. But I'm going to come back and catch the prayer. So don't leave before prayer begins, okay? Subhanallah bihamdi subhanaka la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
Allahu Akbar, Allah.